Have you ever wondered if your fridge is the best place to store all your food? What if I told you that certain foods you've been keeping in the fridge are losing their flavor, texture, and even their nutritional value? It's true. You may be unknowingly ruining your food every time you open the fridge door. But don't worry, you're not alone. Many people make this mistake without realizing the impact it's having on the quality of their meals and overall health. In today's video, we'll uncover the 10 common foods you should never refrigerate. You'll be amazed at how simple changes to your storage habits can make a world of difference in the taste and texture of your food. From potatoes to tomatoes, honey to olive oil, we'll explore why refrigeration is harmful to these foods. Imagine enjoying the freshest, most flavorful tomatoes, crispy potatoes, and smooth olive oil, all by simply knowing the best way to store them. You might be surprised to learn that improper storage could be compromising your health, too. Some foods, when refrigerated, can develop harmful compounds like acrylamide, which is linked to potential health risks. Plus, there are easy solutions that don't require drastic changes, just small tweaks to how and where you store your food. By watching until the end, you'll not only save your food from unnecessary spoilage, but also preserve its nutritional benefits for a longer, healthier life. Stick with me to find out the 10 foods you should never store in the fridge, and why. If you are not subscribed, subscribe and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support means a lot to me, and if you enjoyed this video, you can help me continue spreading the valuable lessons by liking and sharing it. If you like the topic of this video, please comment 1. If you don't, please comment 0 to let me know how I can improve and make better videos for you. Now, let's begin. Number 1. Potatoes. We often think that storing potatoes in the refrigerator is a good idea, but let me tell you, it's a mistake that can change everything about them. The cold temperature might seem like a harmless place to store them, but in reality, it completely alters their taste, texture, and overall quality in ways that are almost impossible to ignore. When potatoes are exposed to cold, the starches inside them turn into sugars at a faster rate than they would at room temperature. And here's the problem. That process makes them unnaturally sweet and gritty when you cook them. It's a texture nightmare, especially when you're trying to fry or bake them. What should be a golden, crispy, delicious treat ends up being an off-puttingly sweet, strange mess. But it doesn't stop there. Storing potatoes in the fridge isn't just a matter of taste, it's a health issue, too. That sugary transformation can lead to the formation of acrylamide, a chemical compound that's formed when foods are cooked at high temperatures. Acrylamide is considered a carcinogen, which means it has the potential to increase the risk of certain cancers when consumed regularly. To think, something as simple as storing potatoes improperly could be setting us up for bigger health concerns down the road. It's honestly alarming, and it makes me more aware than ever of the small choices we make every day in our kitchens that can affect our well-being. And then there's the moisture problem. Refrigerators, with their chill and damp environment, can actually accelerate the spoilage of potatoes. Excess moisture leads to bacterial growth, which turns your once firm, fresh potatoes into soggy, moldy disappointments. You'll start to notice that strange smell, that awful mushy texture, and let's not even mention the total loss of the potato's quality. It's so frustrating because potatoes are a versatile and delicious ingredient, but they lose their magic when stored in the fridge. So, what's the solution? It's simple, really. Store your potatoes in a cool, dark, well-ventilated space. A pantry, a cellar, or even a paper bag works wonders. In these environments, they can keep their natural firmness, flavor, and texture for much longer. And trust me, it's worth the extra bit of effort to get it right. Proper storage doesn't just help keep them fresh, it prevents them from sprouting and going bad. There's no need for these precious spuds to go to waste, especially when all it takes is a little bit of care and attention. Another key tip: never, ever store potatoes in plastic bags. They trap moisture like nobody's business, speeding up spoilage. Instead, go for breathable options like mesh bags, burlap sacks, or even open baskets. These allow air to circulate and keep your potatoes in the best condition possible. And most importantly, make sure they're kept away from direct sunlight. Sunlight triggers the production of solanine, a toxic substance that can make potatoes dangerous to eat if consumed in large amounts. Nobody wants to risk that, right? Lastly, a word of advice. Keep your potatoes and onions separate. As much as they might look cute together in a basket, onions release gases that can make your potatoes spoil faster. It's a small detail that makes a huge difference. By following these straightforward but crucial storage techniques, you can ensure that your potatoes stay fresh, nutritious, and ready to shine in your meals. They'll taste better, last longer, and you can feel good about serving them up to your family and friends, knowing you're making the healthiest, tastiest choice. Number 2. Tomatoes. Tomatoes are not just fruits. They are little bursts of sunshine and flavor, packed with life. However, they are also incredibly delicate and need to be treated with the utmost care if we want to preserve their rich, juicy taste and desirable texture. Too often, we make the mistake of tossing them in the fridge, believing that cold temperatures will keep them fresh longer. In truth, refrigeration is a silent killer of flavor. Cold temperatures disrupt the natural enzymes responsible for the beautiful taste that tomatoes offer. These enzymes are vital to the complexity of a tomato's flavor, and when they are interrupted, the result is a bland, unappealing tomato that lacks its vibrant zest. Instead of being a juicy, flavorful delight, it becomes nothing more than a pale imitation of what it should be: grainy, dry, and disappointing. The real issue here is that tomatoes, like all fruits, continue to ripen after they're harvested. This natural process is essential in bringing out their peak flavor. But when placed in the cold confines of a refrigerator, that delicate ripening process is halted. It's heartbreaking to think about all the tomatoes that have had their potential stunted just because we were too quick to refrigerate them in hopes of prolonging their shelf life. The reality is that refrigeration stops tomatoes from becoming the best version of themselves. It's not just the taste we're sacrificing. Tomatoes are packed with incredible health benefits, and many of these are compromised by refrigeration. Lycopene, the powerful antioxidant that gives tomatoes their rich red color, is also known for its ability to reduce the risk of heart disease and certain cancers. When tomatoes are stored in the fridge, the lycopene levels drop, robbing us not only of flavor but of the health benefits they provide. Why let something so simple and nourishing lose its power when a simple change in how we store it could preserve its vitality? That's why keeping tomatoes at room temperature, where they can naturally ripen and retain their health-boosting properties, is always the best choice. The way we store tomatoes is just as important as how we eat them. To preserve their freshness, the ideal place for them is at room temperature, away from the harsh rays of the sun, and with the stem side down. The stem area is the most vulnerable part of the tomato, where moisture loss and bacterial infiltration tend to occur, so positioning the tomato stem side down slows the inevitable process of deterioration. It's something so simple, yet so powerful. And if you happen to have unripened tomatoes, don't be tempted to speed up the process. Let them ripen naturally, on the counter, in their own time. Trust that the result will be worth the wait. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 1 below to let me know that you are still here with me. I know that life happens, and sometimes our tomatoes might ripen too fast, leaving us with no choice but to store them in the fridge for a little while longer. But please always remember this. Before you take that overripe tomato from the cold, give it the time it needs to return to room temperature. Let it breathe again, and it will surprise you. It won't be the same as it would have been if it had been kept properly, but it will be closer to its original glory. For those of us who simply can't waste food and want to extend the life of our ripe tomatoes, try placing them in a cool, dark pantry or wrapping them in a paper bag. That way, they can stay fresh without losing all the richness they offer. But don't forget one important rule. Never, under any circumstances, store tomatoes near fruits like bananas and apples, which produce ethylene gas. This gas accelerates the ripening process far too quickly, leading to spoilage before we know it. By following these simple tips, we can ensure that our tomatoes not only retain their delicious taste, but also continue to deliver the full nutritional punch that makes them such a wonderful addition to our meals. Number 3. Onions. Onions are undeniably a kitchen essential, a versatile ingredient that adds depth and flavor to countless dishes, but many of us make the mistake of storing them incorrectly, causing a whole host of issues that can ruin both their taste and texture. In my own experience, I've learned that refrigeration can wreak havoc on onions, a simple error that's all too easy to make. When you refrigerate onions, the excessive moisture in the fridge gets absorbed by the layers, leading to an unfortunate softening of the onion. Over time, they become slimy, and before you know it, mold starts to set in, completely transforming them from crisp and fresh to soggy and inedible. But that's not the only problem. Onions naturally contain starches, and when exposed to cold temperatures, those starches convert into sugars. This process might sound harmless, but it results in unexpectedly sweet onions, completely altering their intended savory flavor profile. If you've ever bitten into an onion and been shocked by its unexpected sweetness, you'll know exactly what I mean. It's unsettling, especially when you're expecting the familiar sharpness that onions bring to your cooking. It's as though the essence of the onion is lost, and it's just not the same anymore. Another thing I can't overlook is the way onions absorb odors in the fridge. We all know that onions have that powerful, pungent aroma, but when they're stored in a fridge, they pick up the smell of everything else around them. The last thing you want is your onions making the rest of your food taste like, well, onions. It's one of those frustrating kitchen dilemmas where something so simple can mess up the flavors of your carefully prepared meal. This issue worsens in a fridge with high moisture levels, a damp environment that encourages the onions to sprout prematurely, shortening their shelf life and turning their texture into something unpleasant. From my perspective, the key to keeping onions at their best lies in room temperature storage, in a cool, dry, and well-ventilated space. A pantry, cupboard, or basement is an ideal spot where they can breathe and maintain their freshness. The last thing you want to do is store them in a plastic bag, which locks in moisture and speeds up spoilage. Mesh bags, paper bags, or open baskets are perfect because they allow air circulation, helping the onions stay crisp and firm. And please, don't store your onions next to potatoes. I've made this mistake too. Potatoes release moisture and gases that can accelerate onion deterioration. It's a recipe for both of them to spoil faster than you'd expect, leaving you with sad, mushy vegetables instead of the hearty, flavorful additions you were hoping for. Now, if you've already cut or peeled your onions, yes, refrigeration is acceptable, though it should be done with care. It's crucial to store them in an airtight container or tightly wrap them in plastic to prevent the strong odor from seeping into other foods. But when it comes to whole onions, room temperature storage is always the best method. This approach preserves their sharp flavor, keeps their texture firm, and gives them a much longer shelf life, ensuring that you can enjoy their full potential every time you cook. Trust me, the difference is palpable, and it's worth the little extra effort to store them correctly. Number 4. Garlic. Garlic, one of the most beloved and flavorful staples in our kitchens, deserves so much more attention when it comes to how we store it. The importance of not refrigerating garlic cannot be overstated. Refrigeration can be downright harmful to this kitchen treasure, stripping away the essence of its incredible flavor. Cold temperatures tend to disrupt garlic's delicate composition, which ultimately impacts its freshness and longevity. When garlic is stored in the fridge, it's almost like locking away its true potential. The cold can cause garlic to sprout, giving birth to those unsightly green shoots that not only ruin its appearance but also lend a bitter, unpleasant taste. And I can't help but feel a little heartbroken every time I see garlic shrivel up and lose its lively, robust flavor because it was improperly stored. Moreover, refrigeration fosters a damp environment that is a breeding ground for mold, which compromises the quality and overall integrity of the garlic bulbs. When I think of all those wasted cloves that could have been full of flavor, it's frustrating. The fridge changes garlic in another subtle, but important way. It alters its sugar content. This results in a garlic that tastes less pungent, less savory, and less like the wonderful burst of flavor we all crave in our dishes. Garlic's characteristic kick and aroma start to fade, leaving a ghost of its former self. It's almost poetic how garlic, in its raw form, absorbs the surrounding smells and flavors of whatever is in the fridge. It's like a sponge, and if it's not stored properly, it can take on the odors of other foods. This can completely alter the garlic's unique and powerful flavor. It's something I've learned the hard way many times over. Garlic that is taken on the scent of leftovers or worse, stale fridge air, never performs as it should in the kitchen. The right way to store garlic is quite simple but requires a bit of mindfulness. Instead of relegating it to the cold confines of the fridge, place garlic in a dry, well-ventilated space at room temperature. A breathable container, like a mesh bag, wire basket, or a perforated bowl, works wonders to keep it fresh. These options allow garlic to breathe, preventing the buildup of moisture that accelerates spoilage. Plastic bags or sealed containers, however, are garlic's worst enemy. They trap moisture, creating the perfect conditions for mold to thrive and robbing garlic of its vibrant flavor. Now, once garlic has been peeled or chopped, I understand the temptation to refrigerate it for convenience, but it's essential to store it in an airtight container. This step ensures that the garlic won't contaminate other foods with its powerful aroma. And if you're planning on storing garlic for a longer period, freezing it or preserving it in oil are viable options. Just remember to exercise caution. If you store garlic in oil, it needs to go straight into the fridge and should be used within a short period to avoid the risk of harmful bacterial growth. Ultimately, by following these straightforward but important storage guidelines, we can preserve garlic in all its glory, keeping it pungent, flavorful, and fresh for as long as possible. And truly, there's nothing quite like the satisfaction of knowing you've cared for your ingredients properly, allowing them to shine in your cooking. Garlic may seem small, but it holds so much power, and by giving it the right environment to thrive, you're ensuring that your culinary creations can be as bold and delicious as they deserve to be. Number 5. Avocados. Avocados are truly a gift from nature, rich in flavor, creamy texture, and nutrients that can elevate any dish. But when it comes to how we store them, many people unknowingly make mistakes that can ruin the perfect avocado experience. One of the most crucial things to remember is that unripe avocados should never, ever be refrigerated. I cannot stress this enough. Storing them in cold temperatures essentially halts the natural enzymatic processes that allow the fruit to ripen. It's like trying to force something to grow in an environment that doesn't support its growth. It simply won't thrive. Instead of ripening and softening into that perfect buttery texture we all crave, the fruit becomes hard and flavorless, taking forever to soften and never truly reaching its full potential. The reason for this is that avocados, like so many fruits, release ethylene gas, a natural compound that triggers the ripening process. This gas works wonders at room temperature, where it can do its job without any interruptions. But when avocados are exposed to cold, it's like hitting the pause button on their journey to perfection. It can sometimes stop the process altogether, leaving you with a sad, unappetizing fruit that doesn't quite live up to what you were hoping for. Now, I get it. Sometimes we find ourselves with an avocado that's ripened just a little too quickly, or maybe we've bought a bunch and need to extend their lifespan. In these cases, yes, you can refrigerate a ripe avocado, but here's the tricky part: timing is everything. If you leave it in the fridge for too long, even the most perfect, ripe avocado can lose its charm. It's heartbreaking. You'll notice it starts to develop a slightly watery texture, and the once vibrant, fresh taste starts to turn slightly rancid due to lipid oxidation. That's when you know things have gone wrong, and it's such a shame because that avocado could have been something truly amazing if only it had been stored properly. And then, of course, there's the heartbreaking moment when you cut into an avocado. We've all been there, right? You open it up, and before you know it, that gorgeous green flesh begins to brown. The browning happens because of oxidation, and sadly, it happens very quickly when exposed to air. I know, it's devastating. But there's a silver lining. The key to preventing this is proper storage. It's a small effort, but it makes a world of difference. Storing your cut avocado in an airtight container and adding a little lemon or lime juice to the exposed surface can help to slow down oxidation and preserve the freshness for a longer time. That extra bit of care can keep your avocado looking and tasting fresh, just like it did when you first cut into it. For those of us who enjoy the anticipation of a perfectly ripe avocado, the best approach is to let it ripen naturally at room temperature. I know it takes patience, but it's worth it. If you're in a hurry, storing your avocados in a brown paper bag with a banana or apple can speed up the ripening process. These fruits release more ethylene gas, which works wonders to get your avocados to that just right stage a little faster. But remember, this is only for those moments when you need a little help from your fruit friends. Number 6. Bananas. Bananas are one of nature's simplest and most delightful treats, but when it comes to storing them, many people unknowingly harm their quality by placing them in the fridge. Bananas thrive in warm environments, and refrigeration completely disrupts their delicate ripening process. When exposed to cold temperatures, the skin of the banana can quickly turn an unappealing dark color, giving the false impression that they are already overripe. But inside, the fruit is still underdeveloped, robbing you of that sweet, creamy texture and flavor that makes bananas so irresistible. The chilling injury bananas suffer in the fridge prevents them from converting starch into sugar, which is the very magic that gives them their signature sweet taste. Instead, they turn into something bland and flavorless, with a firm, rubbery texture that is far from the soft, satisfying bite we all crave. Worse, the cold affects the banana's cell structure, leaving it mushy and unpleasant once it returns to room temperature. Imagine the disappointment of eagerly peeling open a banana, only to find that it has lost all its delightful charm. The very thought of it feels like a missed opportunity, like a promise unfulfilled. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 2 below to let me know that you are still here with me. And if that wasn't enough, refrigeration can also lead to condensation building up on the banana's skin, which creates a perfect environment for mold to grow. It's frustrating to think that such a simple fruit can be ruined so easily by an error most of us make without even realizing it. But here's the good news. There's an easy way to keep your bananas in top shape. Store them at room temperature, away from the cold, and let nature do its magic. A simple yet thoughtful touch, hanging them from a banana hook, allows for better air circulation and helps prevent bruising, keeping them fresher for longer. It's such a small, considerate step that can make a world of difference. If you're concerned about bananas ripening too quickly, there's no need to worry. A small adjustment can help slow down the process. Try separating each banana from the bunch. This allows each one to ripen more slowly, without the rush that a bunch encourages. Now, let's be real for a moment. What do you do when your bananas are overripe and no longer appealing for a snack? Don't despair. While refrigeration is never the answer, freezing your bananas is a game changer. It's like giving them a second chance at greatness. Simply peel and slice them before freezing, and you've got ready-to-use pieces for smoothies, baking, or even a hearty oatmeal topping. If you're feeling particularly creative, mash those overripe bananas and store them in an airtight container in the freezer for the perfect base for banana bread or pancakes. It's a beautiful way to make the most out of what you have, rather than letting them go to waste. In the end, bananas are a simple pleasure that deserves to be treated with care. When stored properly, they can bring joy and nourishment in so many ways, and they are always ready to be the perfect companion to your breakfast, snack, or dessert. Number 7. Uncut melons. When it comes to whole melons like watermelon, cantaloupe, and honeydew, it's important to keep them at room temperature if you want to experience their true, delicious sweetness and perfect texture. Trust me, there's something so satisfying about biting into a fresh melon that's been allowed to ripen naturally. When you put these fruits in the fridge before they've been cut, the cold air can suppress their natural sugars, which means they won't taste nearly as flavorful as they could be. I've found that the joy of enjoying a perfectly ripe melon is so much more pronounced when it has been given the time to develop all of its sweet, juicy goodness at room temperature. This, in my opinion, is one of the small but truly meaningful things in life. Getting the best flavor out of something as simple and beautiful as a melon. But why does this happen? Well, it's because melons, like many fruits, continue to develop their sugars even after they've been harvested. That's right, they keep evolving, reaching their peak sweetness over time. When we put them in the fridge, we're essentially putting the brakes on that process. And, while it might seem like refrigeration would make them last longer, it's making them less enjoyable in terms of flavor. It's like storing a piece of happiness in the fridge and then wondering why it doesn't feel the same when you open it. On top of that, refrigeration can also mess with the melon's texture. There's something magical about the firm yet tender bite of a melon that's been properly stored, and cold storage can disrupt that delicate balance. The cold air in the fridge causes changes in the structure of the melon's cells, often making them grainy or mushy. For me, the worst offender is the watermelon. When it's been refrigerated for too long, it can become excessively watery, leaving behind that satisfying crunch we all crave. It's honestly heartbreaking when a perfectly ripe watermelon loses its magic because of improper storage. But there's more. Studies have shown that melons kept at room temperature have higher levels of antioxidants than their refrigerated counterparts. So, not only does refrigerating a melon rob you of its full flavor, it also means you're missing out on the health benefits that come with these powerful nutrients. Think about it. You could be getting more vitamins and antioxidants simply by storing your melons properly. That's a pretty powerful reason to let them sit out for a bit longer before you enjoy them. That said, when it comes to cut melons, refrigeration is necessary. Once you've sliced open that gorgeous melon, the clock starts ticking. Storing cut melon in the fridge is the best way to prevent any bacterial growth and preserve its freshness. I recommend placing it in an airtight container and finishing it within 3 to 4 days for the best taste and safety. Oh, and here's a little tip I've picked up along the way. To prevent the melon from drying out, place some plastic wrap directly over the exposed flesh before sealing the container. It's a small step, but it makes all the difference in keeping the melon as fresh and flavorful as possible. In the end, it all comes down to treating your melons with the care and respect they deserve. By keeping them at room temperature until they're cut, you'll enjoy them in their full, sweet glory. You're not just eating fruit. You're savoring a simple joy that can make your day a little brighter. Number 8. Bread. When it comes to storing bread, one of the most common mistakes people make is keeping it in the fridge, and sadly, this practice does more harm than good. Let me share my thoughts on why refrigeration is a terrible idea for your loaf of bread. The truth is, refrigeration speeds up the process of staling, not slows it down. The cold temperature causes the starch molecules in the bread to recrystallize at a faster rate, and that leads to a dry, tough, and crumbly texture that nobody enjoys. This scientific process, known as retrogradation, happens no matter how tightly you wrap the bread in plastic, which only adds to the disappointment of biting into a loaf that's lost its soft, chewy goodness. Now, I understand that many people throw their bread in the fridge hoping it'll last longer, but in doing so, they're sacrificing both flavor and texture. Sure, the refrigerator might slow down the growth of mold, there's no doubt about that. But who wants to eat a slice of bread that feels like chewing on cardboard? And if you store bread in the fridge, you'll inevitably encounter an issue of moisture imbalance. The fridge introduces an overwhelming level of humidity, making the crust soggy and unappetizing, while the inside dries out to a point where it just doesn't feel or taste right anymore. It's just a far cry from that fresh, warm, soft loaf we all crave. What's even worse is that, if bread gets exposed to condensation inside its packaging, it can create the perfect breeding ground for mold. Moldy bread. That's not only unpleasant, but it's unsafe to eat, too. I can't help but feel that this whole refrigeration method is more trouble than it's worth. Instead of tossing bread into the fridge, I suggest a more thoughtful approach. If you plan to eat it within a few days, keeping it in a bread box or a cool, dry pantry is your best bet. Let the bread breathe in a way that allows it to maintain its rich texture and wonderful flavor. Now, if you're not going to eat the bread right away, freezing it is a much smarter option. Freezing helps preserve the bread without sacrificing its taste or texture. I recommend slicing the bread before freezing so that you can simply pull out a piece at a time. When you're ready to enjoy a slice, just toast or warm it in the oven for a few minutes to bring it back to life. Trust me, that warm, soft loaf will taste just as good as when it was first baked, and the satisfaction of enjoying fresh bread will make you forget all about the fridge's failed attempt at preservation. Number 9. Honey. Honey is a truly remarkable gift from nature, one of the rare foods that can stand the test of time without ever spoiling when stored correctly. I find it almost magical how this sweet substance, with its naturally low moisture content and high acidity, creates an environment where harmful bacteria and mold simply cannot survive. This is not just an interesting fact, but a testament to the profound wisdom that nature holds within it. It's almost as though honey was created to endure, providing us with a reliable and healthy sweetener that remains unchanged over the years. The thing that truly fascinates me is the way honey can last indefinitely without refrigeration, almost like a secret weapon against spoilage. I think we all feel a sense of wonder when we realize that something so natural, so pure, doesn't need all the modern technology to keep it fresh. In this world where everything seems to require refrigeration or preservatives, honey is a shining example of simplicity and resilience. But, and this is where things get a little tricky, if you place honey in the fridge, something happens that many of us may not realize at first. The cold accelerates the crystallization process. This causes the honey to thicken, turning grainy and somewhat difficult to manage. It's not dangerous, it's just not the same. The texture can become frustrating, and the once smooth, pourable liquid you once loved is now hard to spread. For me, there's something oddly disappointing about it, especially when you're in the mood for a delicate spoonful of liquid gold and instead find yourself struggling with a hardened jar. Crystallization happens when the glucose molecules in honey separate from the water, forming these tiny sugar crystals. It's a natural process, but one that can change your experience with honey. And yet, I can't help but feel that there's a kind of beauty in that process, too. An example of nature doing its own thing, even if it's not the most convenient for us. After all, crystallized honey is still completely safe to eat and doesn't lose its inherent goodness. It's just that the texture can feel more like a chore than a treat. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 3 below to let me know that you are still here with me. One of the most significant things we often overlook is that refrigeration speeds up this crystallization process. It's almost as if the fridge is in a hurry to change honey, making it more solid than it should be. And for those who are accustomed to the sweet, smooth texture, it can be a real shock. And let's not even get started on the way refrigeration affects the flavor. The cold environment can dull the honey's delicate floral and sweet notes, and over time, the once vibrant taste can feel flat and less inspiring. For me, this loss of flavor is the hardest part of refrigeration. It's like the soul of the honey gets buried under the chill. To keep honey in its prime, the best thing to do is simple. Store it in an airtight container at room temperature, away from the heat of the sun or any intense light. A kitchen pantry or cupboard works wonders in preserving its smooth, silky consistency and the rich, delightful taste that first drew you in. It's so easy, yet so often forgotten in the rush to make everything last longer. Sometimes, the best way to preserve something beautiful is just to let it be, to honor its natural state, and to give it the space to continue offering us its sweet, nourishing touch. Number 10. Olive oil. Olive oil is more than just an ingredient in the kitchen. It's a treasure. Its rich, smooth flavor, versatility, and impressive health benefits make it an essential part of countless dishes. Whether drizzled over a fresh salad or used to sauté vegetables, olive oil is a versatile companion, enhancing the flavors of any meal. But, despite its many positive qualities, it's essential to store it properly to preserve its integrity. Unfortunately, many people mistakenly refrigerate olive oil, thinking they are prolonging its shelf life, but this is far from the best method and could be harming it more than helping. When olive oil is chilled, it begins to solidify, forming a waxy, cloudy texture that makes it almost impossible to pour and use. Imagine reaching for your bottle of olive oil to cook, only to find that it's thickened into a goopy mass. It's frustrating, isn't it? You're suddenly stuck with the inconvenience of waiting for it to return to room temperature, which can be such a hassle, especially when you're trying to whip up a quick meal. The frustration is real, and it's hard to deny that it messes with the ease of cooking. But the worst part? It's not just about the inconvenience. Storing olive oil in the fridge exposes it to condensation, and even a little moisture trapped inside the bottle can lead to bacterial growth. This is a problem you certainly don't want, as it can rapidly spoil the oil and shorten its shelf life. For extra virgin olive oil, arguably the most delicate and valuable, it's even more problematic. The very oil you rely on for its fresh taste and health benefits could lose its charm, turning rancid and losing its distinctive, exquisite flavor. This is a mistake I'd urge anyone to avoid, especially if you treasure the natural goodness olive oil has to offer. Moreover, while refrigeration might be harmful, heat, light, and oxygen are the true enemies of olive oil. Exposing it to high temperatures or direct sunlight is like giving it a death sentence. The oil starts to oxidize, and instead of that fresh, fruity flavor you love, you get a rancid taste that's bitter and off-putting. It's heartbreaking when something so simple, like olive oil, gets ruined by improper storage. So, what's the solution? The answer is simple. Store it properly. Rather than chilling it, place your bottle of olive oil in a cool, dark place, like your pantry or a cupboard. Keep it away from the heat of your stove and the sunlight that streams through the window. For even better protection, opt for dark glass bottles or stainless steel containers to shield the oil from harmful light exposure. When treated with care, olive oil will retain its vibrant freshness and continue to offer its many health benefits for months to come. It's one of the simplest yet most satisfying ways to elevate your dishes, adding a burst of flavor and a dash of health to everything you cook. Treat your olive oil right, and it'll treat you well. As we wrap up, I hope you've learned some valuable tips today. Whether it's about the best way to store your olive oil or how to keep its natural goodness intact for all your delicious meals. It's amazing how something as simple as proper storage can make such a difference in the flavor and quality of what we eat. So, what stood out to you the most? What's one thing you've learned today that you're going to put into practice in your own life? I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below and share with us one tip that you found helpful and are planning to try out. Remember, small changes can lead to big improvements, and you're taking steps to make the most of your kitchen essentials. If you enjoyed this video, please leave your comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more tips and insights. Thanks for watching, and I can't wait to hear what you're going to try next.